They found his snowmobile still running, his coffee still warm, and the ice beneath him, bent downward like something landed from above. No footprints, no broken ice. 7 months later, he woke up on a highway wearing the same clothes, and his body said only 2 days had passed. Whatever took him didn't live in our time. Before we continue, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. This is Crime Hall. The story begins February 9, 1991, White Bear Lake, Minnesota. The sun hadn't fully risen yet when Daniel Moore stepped out of his pickup truck and inhaled the frozen air. The temperature sat well below freezing, the kind that made every breath sting. Ice covered the lake like a sheet of dull glass, thick enough to hold trucks, snowmobiles, and entire fishing huts. Daniel had been ice fishing since he was a teenager. 20 years of experience. Never reckless, never careless. His wife, Karen, later told police he had triple-checked his gear that morning. Insulated boots, thermal coveralls, spare flashlight batteries, rope, flares, emergency radio. He even kissed her forehead and joked, "If I'm not back by dark, send a rescue team." He always came back by dark. At 6:45 a.m., Daniel drove his Polaris snowmobile onto the ice, heading toward a stretch locals called Dead Water Bend, a deep pocket nearly 3 miles from shore where the lake dropped, sharply beneath the frozen surface. Witnesses would later say they saw him waving as he passed, snowmobile humming steadily across the ice. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming, and then nothing at all. By 5:30 p.m., Karen Moore knew something was wrong. Daniel never stayed out late. He hated navigating the ice after sunset, when darkness fell and his phone went straight to voicemail. Fear settled into her chest like wet cement. She called a neighbor, then another. By 7 p.m., local authorities were notified. Searchlights cut across the ice by nightfall. Snowmobiles spread out in a widening arc, engines echoing across the frozen lake. At 9:14 p.m., one of the volunteers shouted over the radio. They'd found Daniel's snowmobile. It was upright, parked neatly, engine off. Next to it stood his ice auger and a fishing rod frozen inside a freshly drilled hole. A thermos lay tipped over nearby, coffee spilled and hardened into ice mid-pour. His flashlight was still on, beam shining uselessly into the snow. Batteries full. There were no drag marks, no footprints leading away, no signs of a struggle. Daniel Moore had vanished without moving a single thing. Then someone noticed something else. 30 feet from the snowmobile, the snow dipped inward. A perfect circular depression nearly 6 feet across. The ice beneath it hadn't cracked, but it bowed downward unnaturally, as if something incredibly heavy had pressed down from above, not fallen through, pressed down. Rescue teams stared at it in silence. No one had an explanation. The search lasted 3 weeks. More than 100 volunteers, helicopters, tracking dogs, ice divers after partial thaw. Authorities drilled hundreds of test holes across a 5-mile radius. Sonar scans mapped the lake floor. Divers searched beneath the ice, fighting freezing currents and near zero visibility. Nothing. No body. No clothing. No equipment. By early March, the official statement was released. The most probable explanation is an accidental fall through unstable ice and subsequent submersion. The lake currents may have carried the body beyond the search area. Karen Moore rejected it instantly. So did Evan Moore, Daniel's younger brother, a civil engineer who knew ice dynamics well enough to say one thing with certainty. Daniel hadn't fallen through. There was no break, no fracture, no hole, only that impossible indentation. Karen hired a private investigator, Thomas Caldwell, a former federal analyst who reviewed weather data, ice thickness reports, and witness accounts. His conclusion was unsettlingly simple. This case does not align with known accident patterns. By summer, hope faded. By August, paperwork began. By September, Daniel Moore was legally declared dead. Then, 7 months after he vanished, he was found. October 18, 1991, 5:40 a.m., outside Bangor, Maine. A delivery driver named Paul Richards slowed his truck after spotting a figure collapsed beside the highway. The man was unconscious but breathing. He wore heavy winter coveralls, insulated boots, and a wool cap, wildly inappropriate for the mild autumn morning. At the hospital, nurses checked his pockets. That's when everything changed. The driver's license read, Daniel Moore, Minnesota, a man missing for 7 months, a man presumed dead. When Daniel woke up around noon, the first words out of his mouth weren't fear, or confusion, or panic. They were irritation. Why didn't anyone wake me up? Karen's going to be mad I missed dinner. The date was October 18th. Daniel insisted it was still February 9th. Doctors were baffled almost immediately. Daniel showed no signs of prolonged exposure, starvation, dehydration, or muscle loss. His weight matched his February medical records. His vitals were normal. Blood worked clean. Then came the details no one could explain. His hair growth measured roughly 2 to 3 millimeters, about 2 days' worth. His fingernails and toenails told the same story. Biologically, Daniel's body had experienced less than 48 hours. Psychiatric evaluations ruled out psychosis, dissociative disorders, and delusion. He was calm, coherent, oriented. His memory was flawless. Right up until the moment he said he lay down beside his snowmobile to rest. Toxicology tests found nothing. Neurological scans showed nothing. And then there was his watch, a mechanical wristwatch, still ticking. Stopped at 7:12 p.m., the exact time Daniel claimed he fell asleep. Experts confirmed it should have stopped within 2 days without winding. It hadn't. Federal agents arrived quietly. Interviews stretched for hours. Polygraph results suggested Daniel believed every word he said. Financial records showed no motive to disappear, no withdrawals, no planning. Then, abruptly, everything went silent. Medical files were seized. The case was officially closed under a diagnosis of rare dissociative fugue. No records were released. No questions answered. Daniel returned home a week later. Karen hugged him like someone afraid he might vanish again. But he wasn't the same. He stared out windows, flinched at headlights, refused to talk about the lake, except once, to his brother. Late at night, Daniel whispered, "It wasn't cold, and the light wasn't above me. It was under everything." 2 weeks later, anonymous calls began. One phrase repeated, "Stop asking." By winter, the Moore family moved away without telling anyone where. Daniel Moore was last seen in public in 1994. Years later, conspiracy forums would latch onto the case. Military experiments, time displacement, unacknowledged physics. Skeptics scoffed, but the questions remained. How did the ice bend without breaking? Why did time stop for one man, but not the world? Why were the records sealed? And why did the lake stay silent? Somewhere in a locked archive, there is a file with answers, and like Daniel Moore himself, it may never come back.